Hi everybody, welcome to the stream. I just received word that everything is working. For some reason, Facebook isn't able to show me that I am streaming, but apparently I am. So feel free to comment if you need clarification on anything or if anything's not working while we sort all this out. So this is the first episode in a series we're calling Raccoon Laboratory. All the Raccoon Laboratory videos are going to be streamed from here in my home studio because Firebird Community Arts isn't open to the public right now because of the COVID-19 outbreak. But I'm really excited because basically I'm going to share with all of you, like tons of different things. I don't even really know how to phrase it. We wanted to call this show Raccoon Laboratory because I think that describes the spirit of my artistic practice and the skills that I've gathered over the years trying to do lots of different things in lots of different ways. What I mean by that is that being an artist for me, the way that I do it often means that I am doing things that I have never tried before. I am learning things that I don't understand on the fly in order to make a project work. So we have all kinds of really exciting and weirdly technical projects that we're going to broadcast to all of you and hopefully make detailed tutorials so that even if you're uninitiated with, say, something like soldering electronics or blowing glass or working with clay, in upcoming episodes we're going to address all those things from the perspective of someone who really doesn't know how to do them. And I'm that novice. I am rarely an expert in the things that I am doing, and I pursue them seriously. So hopefully you all can learn something from this show. And in that spirit, everything we're doing here is open source. If you don't know what that means, basically there are software projects that people voluntarily work on together and then release for free. So we are actually making this show with technologies that are available to anyone on almost any platform, and you don't have to pay for them at all. The laptop I'm using was provided to me by a nonprofit called Free Geek Chicago. It was really cheap, and I'm really excited to have cobbled together this setup in a way that is hopefully accessible to people who maybe can't afford a MacBook, for example, or can't get anything fancy. So before we move on, I just wanted to say that I'm broadcasting from Garfield Park on Chicago side. I love this neighborhood, and we were hit particularly hard by the COVID-19 outbreak. Many of the people in this neighborhood still need to take public transportation to work every day, and many of the grocery stores in this neighborhood were temporarily closed down because of the looting. So I put a link in the description of this video where you can donate to Westside Mutual Aid. It's a GoFundMe where folks are distributing groceries around the neighborhood. I think it's a wonderful project, and so if you want to help out the neighborhood, please do. I think everybody deserves access to groceries. So without further ado, let's start drawing. One of the things I wanted to address in this video, which I guess is our first video drawing tutorial, is that when I'm teaching a drawing class, the question I get most often is, especially from younger students, is how do I draw X, Y, or Z? I remember the first drawing class I ever taught, someone asked me, how do you draw a monkey? And the real answer is that I can't teach you how to draw anything specific. What I can do is I can teach you a method for being able to draw anything. And that's what I mean when I talk in this video and in future videos about observational drawing. So I guess I just wanted to emphasize that drawing isn't about knowing how to do something. It's not exactly a skill that you learn. It's more like a general approach. It's about paying attention. It's about learning to pay attention to the things that you see and then allow your hand to trace and follow the lines that you are actually seeing. And in that sense, it's a lot like meditation. So I know the world has been pretty scary for many of you recently, and I hope that this video can be a way to learn some maybe coping skills, to learn some ways to stay present in it, too, because I think a lot of really important things are happening that are important to pay attention to. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with just like a quick mindfulness meditation that is relevant to drawing, I promise. Um, but I just want everybody who is listening to just take a moment and try to focus on your breath. So just focus on the feeling of your breathing as you breathe in and as you breathe out. And in and out. It's not important to change the way that you breathe. It's more important to just let all of your thoughts kind of drift past, and instead of getting distracted by them, try to focus on that feeling. Just the breath coming in your nose and out through your mouth. And in through your nose and out through your mouth. There. I already feel better. So the reason I wanted to do that is because I think drawing by observation isn't just vaguely analogous to meditation. I think it's actually a type of meditation. So instead of just focusing on the feeling of the breath entering and leaving, giving us something to hold on to so that we can calm our minds and focus, we're going to do that by looking at the edges of the object that we're drawing. So what I'd like you to do is please grab any object nearby, just in the room, whether that's a book or a shoe or a kid's toy. It doesn't really matter. In this case, I am going to use this, my personal Conair hairdryer. There we go. So we're going to use this. It doesn't really matter what it is. Okay, so I'm going to set that up. Love that. What a weird object. Okay, so what do I mean when I mean pay attention to and trace the edges? Basically what we're going to be doing is you're going to take any writing utensil. I'm going to use a Sharpie because I actually like the way that it forces me to commit to my lines. I think that makes me a little more decisive. It makes me a little less precious about what I'm doing, even though I'm committing to it, because I know I'm going to make mistakes. I just take that for granted, and that's fine. And so we're going to take our drawing utensil, and I want you to practice just tracing in the air the outline of the object with your pen. It helps if you do it slowly. It seems like it's going to be really easy, but it's surprisingly strange if you haven't done it. So we're tracing the outline, trying to very carefully follow it. We're not going to generalize the shapes, and what I mean by that is if you look at the grill on my hair dryer, this seems like it's a circle, but it's actually not a perfect circle. It's slightly distorted because it's turned to the side. So if I generalize it by just saying, oh, this is a circle, this is a kind of wiggly circle, then I'm not really doing justice to the way the edges are weird. These edges are specific, so we're following the edges just as a way of practicing in the air. All right, how's that going for you guys? I'm gonna check the chat real quick. Oh, hi, Annie. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we're gonna start drawing. So we're going to extend this exercise now onto the page. The way the camera is set up, the perspective of the camera is close to my perspective, but it's not exactly right. So I'm gonna do my best to help you guys see what I'm drawing, but it's not quite perfect. Hopefully we'll get it more accurate in future videos. But I'm going to try to trace the object onto my page. And great drawing teachers always say this. When you're drawing well, you're going to look at the thing you are drawing more than you're going to look at your paper. That's really hard to do. It's going to take a lot of practice, and don't worry if you struggle with it at first. That's what we're going to do. I'm basically going to act as if I'm tracing the thing that I see directly onto the page. So let's get started. I'm going to use a timer. This is going to be, I believe, a 3-minute drawing. So I'm going to start my timer here. And let's try it. I'm pretty out of practice. I was warming up earlier today, and oh my goodness, it was awful. So I'm hoping to take a slow, steady pace, calm my nerves a little bit, and maybe feel better about my drawings by the end of the video. We'll see. I'm really trying to take my time with this. I focus on the outside edge and don't really worry about the inside shapes. I find that those are often kind of distracting. They lead me away from what's really important about the drawing. Alright, and then I come back up here, try to follow those curves. Now that I've got the general outline, I'm going to add in some details here. I'm lightly filling in the details, like the inside lip of the rim of the hairdryer. And then I'm going to start to clarify the cord here. Got the little rubber guard on the power cable. You can see, even though it starts off looking very strange, it starts to actually come together and begins to make sense once the details are added. Okay, that's time. Because it's my show, I'm going to cheat a little bit and finish off some details. Feel free to cheat along with me if you want to work on your drawing a little more. Just going to finish that cable inside here. And there we go. So if you watched my last video, you might be familiar with this idea that I was kind of pushing. So I see, looking at the stream, just to clarify, I don't know if you guys can see this, but the actual hairdryer is turned ever so slightly this way as compared to my drawing. The top of my drawing is like a little bulbous and inaccurate, but the way that this is shaped is a distortion caused by the camera. So I'm going to try to work on that in future videos because I don't want this to be confusing. But other than that, I think I just wanted to show that the longer you use this technique, the more the drawing will surprise you with its accuracy. I don't understand really what I'm looking at when I'm drawing it. I don't really understand the way the cables are coiled, which is actually pretty complicated, or the distortions of the shapes. I just really am trying to trace what I see as accurately as I can. And the longer you practice this, the more you'll be able to have way better drawings than you expected to have. Because I think many people come to this with the expectation that this is a set of techniques to be learned, to be employed. And it's really not. It's like one big thing to practice. So with that in mind, we're going to practice again. And this time, we're going to do a much shorter drawing. So this one's going to be 1 minute long. That's going to seem like wildly short. So you're going to have to make decisions quickly. You're going to have to trace quickly. And I would advise that you rotate your object. So I am going to be rotating my hairdryer. Oh, I hope I can get it to stand up like that. That would be great. I don't think I can. That's okay. Okay. So I've rotated my object. And then I'm going to start the timer. After I check the chat real quick. Cool. Okay. And here we go. We're going to do a 1 minute drawing. So this is going to seem like not enough time. We'll have to practice it a bunch. But I want you to just try and move a little faster this time. Try and get a little bit more of the object in less time. So we're going to start that now. I sort of live for these moments like the one I'm drawing right now, where there's a really distinct curve. It's like this in here. Sometimes it's helpful to think about negative shapes. I guess you can't really see it on the object because of the shadow, but these distinct, strange, like abstract shapes are much easier to follow than some of the long, more gradual curves. And that can help you find your place in the drawing. Wow, okay, that is already a minute. I was totally unprepared for that. All right. Oop, is our stream okay? What's going on here? Give me just a minute. I think I might have to fix my camera here. Let's see what we can do. Okay, great, we're back. That is awesome. Okay. So we're just going to try that again. This time I'm going to do 2 minutes. I'm going to rotate the object again. And this isn't, don't worry about getting good drawings. That is not important. We're practicing a really specific skill here, and we're going to be able to use that skill later on. But for right now, it's just practice. So don't worry if you're having trouble. Don't worry if they're looking very ugly. If your drawings are looking weird and ugly, it means you are trying this new technique for you. All right, so we're going to do a 2-minute drawing. Here we go. drawing teachers often say that it's helpful to draw from the shoulder, and I think that's true. I think it can help you have a more deliberate line if you're drawing from the shoulder as opposed to drawing from the wrist. I think it gives you a little more control, and it also helps you sort of, I don't know how to explain it, like, it just helps you make big gestures more accurately. I'm going to add a little detail in there. And then I'm going to find this little part where the shell overlaps here. I'm going to clarify that corner a little bit because I don't like that harsh curve. And then I'm going to follow the power cable up in here. I'm trying really hard to be careful, but not precious. I don't think it's really helpful to like really worry about getting it all super accurate. I think in some ways that's because I'm not a very detail-oriented person, but I think also it's because getting the general shape right most of the time I think is more important than getting every little attribute exactly right. Because we already have cameras, right? Like that's the whole thing is what makes drawings interesting now. Is that they're stylish, is that they have a unique perspective more than that they're really accurate. Because we have technologies that are really accurate. Okay, so that's my 2-minute drawing. I actually like that one. I think it's pretty nice. So finally, we are going to move on to a 3-minute drawing. So you're going to rotate your object one more time, and this time I want you to really try and get some more details in. See if you can, see how far you can get. Definitely prioritize the outer edge over every other part of the object. But I definitely want you to see how far you can get here. Okay, so I'm going to start the timer for 3 minutes. And go. If you all saw my previous video for Artreach's rebirth celebration for their renaming to Firebird Community Arts, you may have seen me use a cross-hatching technique. And I am going to bring back details soon showing you all how to render shadows, if that interests you. I know shading is something that people often ask about when learning how to draw, but I think right now I wanted to focus on edges. I wanted to give them their own video. Because I feel like often art students think of this style of drawing as like an exercise, but not as an actual practice. I guess I mean practice in the artsy-fartsy sense of like not something to do regularly. It's like, I don't know, it's like a test more than it is an actual thing to incorporate into your artwork. But I strongly disagree. I draw like this all the time. I think it makes my drawings more accurate. I think it makes them weirder simultaneously, and I mean that in like the best possible way. So I love just following the contour, following the edges. I'm really trying to pay attention to my object. And you can see here, so I've gone around the handle, I've come back up. I wasn't really paying attention to the relationship between these shapes, but because I was pretty diligent about judging my distances, I was just really paying attention to what I was drawing. Look at that. I met back up where I was supposed to. and now this part right here, the power cable, is in the right place. I love it when that happens. It's very exciting. It doesn't always happen. Okay, so... Oop. Looks like my camera shut off again. Let's see what we can do about that. Oh, interesting. Alright, that is my timer. I'm going to take a minute to see what's going on with my camera, because it stopped streaming. I'm not sure if it's overheating. I don't know if you can tell, but it is crazy hot in my studio right now. So we'll see what's going on. And then I'll get right back to you. So please stand by. We're going to figure this out shortly. Okay, just 1 second. I don't know where to put this thing. Let's see if we can figure this out. Let's try this. Okay, it's working again. I don't really know what's going on. I have to keep restarting my camera. I apologize about that, but we're figuring this out as we go. We are building the airplane as we fly, as they say. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about next is relevant to figuring out how to draw a complicated object when you don't have a lot of time. So you all may have, I'm sure, noticed while drawing with less and less time that it can be hard to know what details to eliminate and what details to focus on when you only have like 1 minute to make a drawing that seems accurate to the object that you're drawing. So I have, for your consideration, an object that's really similar to my hairdryer, which is my beloved Milwaukee impact driver. I think that this drill is, well, it's full of what are called greebles. I think that's what they're called in design. And basically, those are extraneous design elements. So I think you'll find these in lots of cars or like athletic shoes, like men's deodorant, just like stuff that is coded as masculine and has all these crazy shapes. Like if you look at all the shapes on this thing, it's got like these wacky angles, like rubberized coating on top of red plastic, on top of steel. And there isn't really a clear reason why the shapes are the way that they are. I think the designer just thought that it would make for an interesting, like, tough, cyber-seeming object. Like, it seems futuristic or something. And so I guess I wanted to put this side by side with the Conair hairdryer. Just to ask... Great, camera's still working. Just to ask, basically... like, what really makes these objects different? Like, their profiles aren't that different. You use them in basically the same way. But the Milwaukee driver is way more complicated looking than the Conair hairdryer. And The reason I am trying to contrast them, like the reason that it's relevant to your drawings, is that emphasizing the lines that seem obvious on this driver won't actually help a person who's looking at your drawing understand what they're looking at. So, for example, the trigger on the driver is isn't really any more prominent than this weird, complicated rubber coating around the vents back here. But in terms of the person who's looking at your drawing, their understanding of this object relies much more on being able to understand that this is a trigger and that this is some weird, confusing rubber coating. Does that make sense? So I want you to think about when you have to eliminate details that are irrelevant to the contour, to the shape, to the edges of your actual object. These are something more like texture. These are something more extraneous. So these lines here, the ribbing on the handle, it's way less important than the actual fact of this edge along the inside of the handle. So I want you to really prioritize edges. And to give you an example of what I mean, I think it is often the case that when people draw anything with writing on it, people can't help but try to make the writing legible. I think that makes sense. I think if your goal is to communicate something in writing, it makes sense to try and make the writing legible. But if you're doing a drawing by observation, the writing might actually distract from the edges that make the object what it is. So I'm going to do a quick example. This is a coffee can. And I'm going to show you, I'm going to quickly contrast how I see people drawing an object like this as opposed to how I would draw it. And as opposed to how I would recommend that you draw it. Okay, so I'm going to turn it to the side a little bit so that you can see here the text is kind of distorted. It's a little hard to read. So just throwing up a quick example here. I'm not going to belabor it really. We've got our top edge going around the rim of the can. Oh my goodness, this is awful. Okay, and then we follow the bottom edge. And then follow this down here. Come back down. Oh, here's another little trick while I'm in the middle of this. You can draw straighter lines, pulling them towards you, than pushing them away from you. It's just a fact of your physiology. I don't even think about it anymore, but I almost always pull lines down towards me when I need them to be straight. Okay, don't love that, but it's fine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to try and do the writing. This is how I normally see it. So people will write in what is basically their own handwriting. Okay, so a couple of things I want to point out. This object looks more like a cartoon than it needs to for a couple of reasons. One of which is that I haven't really imitated the actual text on the side of the can. What I've done is I've edited it down for clarity. And again, that's legitimate if you're trying to actually make a cartoon, or it's really important that people can read the name on the object, or whatever it is. You're trying to communicate writing specifically. But when you're doing observational drawing, this text it's extraneous. It's a texture. It's like a greeble almost. So by failing to prioritize the contours of the object, the actual shape of the object, what I've done here is I've written in a straight line. I didn't really think about it, but I accidentally wrote this in a straight line, whereas the text on the can curves upwards, following the contours of the can. So what I would recommend you do is this is super hard to do, and sometimes it's actually helpful to turn the can upside down. So I'll actually do that as an example. because it makes the words a little bit harder to read. So we're going to turn the can upside down, and we're going to think about the text as just a shape that we don't know anything about. We're gonna think about it as if we've never seen it before. So I'm gonna follow the contours of the can here. Oh man, I'm gonna have to do this every few minutes. Something's wrong with my camera. All right, we'll figure it out. Give me a minute here. Sorry to keep you all waiting. Okay, let's see if this works. Okay, cool, we're back up and running. Looks like I'm just gonna have to do that every few minutes. So thanks for bearing with me. Okay. So I saw while I was working on my camera that my friend Mark Ziolik, he asked, when we do the inside details, we're focusing on more distinct lines only, not shadow line. And the short answer is yes, and the long answer is we're focusing on details that are going to help a person understand the shape of the object. We're prioritizing shapes. So, for example, looking at this coffee can, the most important thing about this coffee can, just in my opinion, is that the surface of the cylinder that we're looking at goes away from us in space, and we don't have very many lines to communicate the fact that that right here, this surface wraps away from us and then goes around the other side. That's really hard to communicate in 2 dimensions, but we luckily have these lines, these details here, to help us understand that. So I'll show you what I mean. I'm going to do the outline, and then I'll add those lines, and then I'll add the text. So I'm following the contour here. Follow the bottom rim of the lid. Then I'm going to go back to the top and pull the line down. I'm actually going to start to mark in those little wiggles. I think I missed one. I was too busy talking about it. Alright, cool. Let's call that accurate. Okay, so I have my line here. It looks kind of 3D because the curve here is so extreme. If that curve wasn't there, this thing would just look like a rectangle, right? So to further emphasize that curve, then we can go in and just mark those ridges. Oh boy. Here, I'm gonna connect the dots a little here. Okay, pretty loose, not my best work, but you can see that, you can even see mistakes actually how this works. So just the fact of the curve being emphasized over and over again makes the object look more three-dimensional. And you can see here, I was kind of beating myself up about it because I'm having trouble drawing steadily today. It's just one of those days, I don't know. But this line right here, because it looks a little more straight, you can see how it fights the illusion that the cylinder is three-dimensional, right? So we can kind of fill that in if we want to. I think you can actually get away with more mistakes like this than you might expect that you can. I don't think it's really all that important. But okay, so I've emphasized that curve a little bit more, and you can see it already looks more three-dimensional. So getting back to the example that I initially wanted to show all of you, is I'm going to rough in the text. The text is now upside down. It is really hard to understand as words. I'd have to work pretty hard to like think about it and read it upside down, which is exactly what I want. I don't want to be thinking about what it says. I want to be able to see them as shapes, right? Just gonna fix that camera one more time. Okay, and while my camera's cooling down, I'll kind of show you what I mean. All right, so I am So here's what I mean. I started to draw the word chicory. Ooh, it's backwards. Okay, I started to draw the word chicory here, right? And as I continue drawing like that, it's going to follow the contour of the can much more closely than if I was worried about the words being legible or like getting the exact way that they're rendered right. That's not really what we're trying to do. We're trying to use them like our roughed in edges. It's just another edge to help us follow the contour. And the more you can break the habit of trying to read it and make it legible as words, the easier it's going to be to render something in space. So yeah, okay, I'm going to see if I can get this camera up and running again. And we're okay. We're golden. All right, thanks for being so patient and sticking with me, everybody. Okay, I think I've focused enough time on this. We're actually starting to run out of time. So what I want to do here is do a longer drawing. So we're going to put everything we've learned to the test. And we're going to combine focusing on edges with having a little bit more time to actually get the details together of our drawing. So I want you to approach this as if you don't have any time at first. So I want you to try and rough in the general outline. Ignore most of the details. Definitely ignore things that aren't going to help you communicate what your object is. And then we're going to use our extra time to start to rough in those details in order of their priority to understanding the object, right? So here I have these goggles. So I'm going to get started. I think this is going to be a 7-minute drawing. It doesn't sound like a long time, but it's going to feel like forever as compared to 1 minute. And if my camera goes out, I want you guys to keep working while I figure out how to set it back up. Okay, so here we go. I start by following the outside edge here. Relish the unique shapes of this object. I think it's easier to draw too because they're closer together. So I'm not like out at sea with some really long line that might be going in slightly the wrong direction. So it's easier to commit to what I'm doing here, especially like this shape in here. Following this. Okay, so I got my outline done. It's been 2 minutes, so that seems great. So now I'm going to start to work in the really important details, like this curve down here, probably the edges of the glass. These are old-timey welding goggles. I've worn them before just to see how it would work, but they're kind of scary to have on your face when there's like sparks flying at you. They look cool though. Okay. Following that outer edge here, and I realized I kind of put this line a little too far up, so I'm going to try and fix that by connecting this inner edge back out here. So now I'm going to start to render some darker spots here. So I'm going to build up some lines. I think it might kind of be fun to actually make the strap black, so I'm going to do that. And my camera's gone out. I'm going to fix it real quick here. But keep going. You guys have 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So now's the time to start filling in those details. I'm going to give the camera a second to cool down. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just filling that strap in black. I think it looks nice. Adding in some shadows, some reflections. All right, and let's turn that camera back on. See if we can get that going. Okay, and we're back. So I got distracted by my roommate coming home, right? But I kind of put this line in the wrong place. So in order to fix that, I'm actually just going to start adding some shadows to give me a little more diversity in the lines. And then hopefully I can get away with that line just seeming like it's an intended part of the rendering, right? Not ideal, of course, but I think it will actually work. Right, so we're hiding it just a little bit, but then I need it to match the rest of the drawing. So I'm following the contour of the object here. And I'm trying to add shadows that clarify the way the surface is moving. So like, for example, I think of this surface as being mostly vertical, so I'm having the lines follow that verticality of it, right? And then I'm emphasizing my outline a little. And that was time, but let's give it just a couple more minutes so I can finish this up. Okay. Not perfect, but not bad. So I am going to be live streaming every Thursday at 7 p.m. Central Time, every Sunday at 3 p.m., and every Tuesday at 11. And we have all kinds of projects going. I'm going to be doing a lot of drawing classes in the coming weeks, like in the coming month. So expect many more videos like this. We'll work out the kinks with the camera, I promise. But we also have lots of really exciting things planned. So I just want to show you guys a project that I'm super excited about. There is a kind of like a DIY programmer and hardware designer named Joey Castillo who put together schematics for an e-reader. It's like a Kindle. It's like a small Kindle. It has an e-paper display, and the circuit board that he designed comes screen printed with instructions. So I'm going to post the link to how to get these if you're actually interested in assembling them along with me. I'm building 4 of them, and so I'm going to live stream the process. How do they work? How do you solder them together? And we're just going to stream all kinds of stuff. Like, I'm constantly doing projects like this in this studio. We're also going to be setting the glass studio at Firebird Community Arts up with cameras. So we'll be live streaming glass blowing. I'm going to do glass blowing demos. I have to make a ton of pumpkins before the fall, so I'll show you how to make glass pumpkins. And I do all kinds of DIY recording. I produce and record for people around Chicago, and I make my own music. So I'm also going to show you guys some ways to record on the cheap, modify cheap equipment so that it sounds great. Show you how to use some like interesting, like often vintage equipment, but like everything is pretty accessible. Everything is pretty affordable. So I really appreciate you tuning in. There's going to be more. I'm going to rebroadcast this lesson on Sunday, so I'm going to do the same lesson over again. And then my brother and I are going to edit it together into a tutorial that will be publicly available at any time. So yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or to Firebird Community Arts. Before I go, I just wanted to thank Firebird Community Arts for supporting me in this project. They have been overwhelmingly supportive, helping to keep my lights on and my rent paid throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And so I'm super grateful for them. Anything you donate to their organization is going to a really good cause, supporting not only me and this project, but also people all over Chicago, many of whom are recovering from difficult injuries, and giving them access to mental health services and an art studio. So that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, we'll be on again on Sunday at 3 p.m. So take care, everybody. I hope you learned something, and feel free to reach out.